a weekend in Arniston. What a weekend. You talk about uncontested scrums. We're into Tuesday and I still feel like I'm having an uncontested scrum. I don't think I've celebrated as much in a long, long time. A fantastic weekend to kind of get that pub atmosphere, the Arniston Hotel pub. Be there with Darbo, with Monty, with Rock, Willie Delport, with lots of other people, with our families. Watch the Boks go back to back and do it. Having to rely on skill in terrible conditions because there were no scrums for the best part of 30 minutes, the last 30 minutes of the game. But an important series win in the context of how good the Springbok team is, Zels.
Yeah, I think definitely that's a recurring theme of the season is you got to tip your hat to the Boks for the result. You know, it's a big win and it's in Australia. It's back-to-back victories in Australia. That's something that's much better. Much better Australia teams, obviously, that they've played in the past. But South African teams have struggled in Australia. The history is against them there. And, they went there and they got the job done. So, great results.
And they went to two places. Suncorp Stadium, where they had won once in the professional era. And they won brilliantly. They were 33-0 up after 65 minutes. The only try Australia scored, we keep on reminding people, is when the Boks were down to 13 players. And then they still struggled to score that try. It was 33-7. And then to keep Australia tryless again, playing an evolving type of game, it's more attacking box style, to keep them tryless, to get to 30 points, to get the bonus point, to come away from Australia with 10 league points and concede just one try. I think that's the biggest takeaway that Rassie will look at and say they crossed our line once, and they crossed it when they had a number advantage of 2.
Yeah. That for me, that is the hero of this rugby championship so far for South Africa. It's been their defence. They're tackling in the 90s percentile. And like we said, they've conceded one try, which is far less than anybody else. I think the Wallabies and the Pumas have conceded 9 each. I think New Zealand's conceded 5. We've conceded 1. So the defence has been amazing. Quite interesting. That's not at a high rate of dominant tackles. It's just efficient tackling on the gain line, close in, and they've kept these teams out. So, again, not the best Wallabies team we've ever seen, but still.
Now, what does Portugal say now? They want to play the Wallabies. Because Portugal got 3 tries against us in Bloemfontein.
Yeah, exactly, mate.
I mean, they back themselves at the moment to be competitive with the Wallabies.
Yes.
I mean, Georgia were competitive. They lost 40-29 and they were finishing the stronger. If that game had been played up north or neutral ground, you'd back Georgia to kind of run them very close.
Totally.
You know, I did a lovely interview with Off the Ball a bit earlier today. Wonderful friends of ours in Ireland. Great platform. And they were like, how good is it to be in South African rugby at the moment? How good is it to watch these Springboks at the moment? And I kind of said to them, we also have to keep perspective. We drew a series at home against Ireland. 1 played 2. And debatable, the reason we call ourselves 1 is because we won the World Cup. But both teams on par in terms of strength. Very little to choose between them. When they played in Pretoria, when they played in Durban, when they played in Dublin, when they played in Paris, 1 score separates those 2 teams. They are without a doubt the 2 best teams in the world at the moment. And that's what we keep on having to go back to as an anchor is, where were we when we played against Ireland? How are we evolving our game? Because the measurement, the yardstick is not the Wallabies. As mighty as the Boks are at the moment, the Wallabies are woeful.
Yeah.
So, as you said, you can only beat what's in front of you. But that context and perspective can't be reinforced enough that we didn't go over there and beat Sterling Mortlock's Wallabies. We didn't go over there and beat Georgie Gregan and his mates. We did what you expect of a world champion dominant team. We destroyed a very, very vulnerable opponent.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you have to also tip your hat to Rassie there because I was critical of them making 10 changes and potentially losing their momentum. But they got this result with 10 changes, losing their captain in the first quarter, a bunch of new blokes in the lineup. You've got to say that you probably think the Boks got more out of this result with 10 changes than they would have if they'd played the A's and won 50-67.
Without a doubt, and I think a lot of the comments that we got the last time when they announced the initial thing and there were 10 changes and people were like, hey guys, relax. It's Boka, relax. Well, we relaxed, okay?
Yeah.
Never doubt the genius. Never doubt the madman. Never doubt Rassie. It's not doubting him. it's having a rugged discussion. But he knew how he had loaded that bench, that he had that insurance policy. And like when you do see an Eben charging on, it does lessen the blow when your captain goes down, and one of the greatest locks in the world, one of the most capped locks, is the one that's coming on to replace them.
Correct.
I just found again that we make so much of the bomb squad and the effect that and the impact that they have. But in a way, again, it was like everything fell for us because we had to do it differently with the uncontested scrums. Now, I've never known Australian props to line up to get knocked out like that so early in the game.
I have to go have a doctor's appointment.
I've got an HIA appointment.
You look fine to me.
You passed it. No, I haven't. It reminded me when I was at school once, and this one of our players, it's a cricket game, and we played against a guy who already playing for the Western Province team, Paul Raymond, who was very fast at schoolboy level.
Is he related to Sean Raymond from the Leon Schuster rugby?
No,
video?
I doubt it. But the first time the ball hit him on the pads, they appealed. The umpire gave not out, and he said, "No, it's plumb." And he walked. He wasn't facing another ball. He actually walked himself.
This looks too quick.
He's too quick. He wasn't sticking around for the inevitable.
Yeah.
And I think those Aussie props weren't sticking around for the inevitable.
No, spot on.
I think they're going to. It's going to be tough for them playing against the Pumas away. We knew the Pumas weren't going to. We hoped that the Pumas were going to pitch up, but they were still drinking in Wellington for a long, long time. And credit to the All Blacks, they did give that grunt and that intensity that was required. But their game was done by half-time. Also poor conditions. They changed a lot with their back play, lost structure. Argentina came and got a consolation try. So important that the All Blacks came back and demolished the Pumas in the context of them coming to South Africa for back-to-back tests.
Yes.
Equally important that the Boks were so brutal in dismissing the challenge of the Wallabies. But context to everything, it's going to word that we're going to use a lot today. Context is that Welsh side that we put away by close to 50 points at Twickenham struggled in Australia and lost both test matches. I keep on going back to the intensity of that Island series. You just can't compare to what we saw against the Boks and the Wallabies. I mean, that was one place 2 in the world, and this one was one place 10 in the world.
Yeah. And I think, the All Blacks are on their way to South Africa. Ireland and the All Blacks, arguably England, are teams that can keep the box sharp because there's a lot of riffraff hanging around at the moment. Guys that are in stages of rebuilding with serious question marks in the fundamentals of the game. And so I think that's going to be a big challenge for us, because when you are in a state of transition, when you're trying to keep a team frosty for the next World Cup, and it involves maybe moving on some really experienced guys for some youngsters, you want to be testing those youngsters against dinkum opponents. And so when you kind of have these guys that are fall guys as opponents in the lead up to that, it's quite tricky to gauge whether some of these oaks that are coming in are on the level. So I think that'll be challenging for us to keep everybody on point and motivated and focused and etc. And so I think between Ireland and the All Blacks, those are very important opponents for us to keep us on the game.
Do you see a very similar approach that he took to the Ireland series in terms of a match 23, that you may find it's 25, 26 players that make up, fitness permitting, that make up both test matches, and you're not going to see him making 8-9 changes for the second test against the All Blacks? That this is a series approach. It's not about building depth here. This is about, I've had 5 test matches so far this season. I kind of know what my best 23s for the now to beat the All Blacks. Or does he still think, I need to test a couple of players against the All Blacks that may be on that fringe, or maybe in a pecking order of 3, and you see, can he become 2? Yeah,
I think for you and I, and probably a lot of guys, Joe Public, would go full guns to beat the All Blacks, sweep them in the series. I think Rassie is pretty fluid in that. I think a lot of it depends on what happens in the first test at Ellis Park, how that result plays out, how the guys perform, what the margin of victory is, assuming the South Africa wins. I think all of those things will play into his thinking about what he does in the second one. Because he's always got an eye on the next thing, right? And the context of what this does for them. So it's going to be interesting. I don't actually know what Rassie's going to do there.
Now, we know, we said all along that the Wallabies were struggling, okay? We knew what a big rebuild Joe Smith had to do. You just saw what Eddie took to the World Cup. They just didn't have the cattle. They beat a woeful Welsh side at home. But other than that, they've beaten Georgia and Portugal. Those have been their victories. They've been done by everyone considered to be top 6, top 7 in the world, but done so emphatically by the Springboks at home. Was that just like the point that people said, these guys are pretty cuck at the moment?
Yeah, spot on. I think you made a great point. I think last week we were chatting, and I was saying Eddie must be having a bit of a luck watching these Wallabies struggle like this, because everyone, made him shoulder the blame for their poor World Cup. They just don't have the resources, the player personnel to beat serious teams. And you said, well, what about Dave Rennie? I mean, because with these guys that are currently in the Wallabies team, he beat the Boks. He had some great results. He brought the best out of them. You were talking to me about the mongrel that he brings to the teams that he coaches, which I think is a very interesting point.
Yeah, and I mean, what Dave Rennie did with Glasgow, what he did, especially with the Chiefs, when he had the New Zealand under-20s, I think he ran over 2. And you've always been a big Dave Rennie fan. And when you actually go back and look at the performances of the Wallabies under him, there were so many games that there was a score in it. I mean, that one when they went to France and they lost in the last minute, 31-30, I think it was. When they went to Dublin, they could have kicked a penalty to draw the game at 13-all. They went for the win, turned over the ball, and Ireland won 13-10. They turned us over back-to-back in Australia. Now, the only team that I think put them away at that time was England, okay? Those are the results he was getting against the teams we consider the 3 best teams in the world, South Africa, Ireland, and France. And he was competitive against New Zealand. He got a win in Brisbane, I think it was. He got a couple of draws against them. And, I think that was one of the big mistakes I think Australian rugby made, for whatever reason, was to axe him the way they did. Eddie came in, I think he was shocked at how bad it was, threw everyone out and said, let's see what happens, and kind of give them a World Cup experience. And Joe Smith has now got that rebuild, and that rebuild's going to take some time.
Yeah, I think, and we could be wrong, right? But when I look at this Wallabies team, I don't see youngsters that are going to emerge as the next Georgie Gregan, the next Stephen Larkin, the next Owen Finnegan. I don't see a Rocky Elsom in there. And again, maybe I'm misreading it. Maybe those guys are there. But I think that if Australia bounces back in some shape or fashion, it's going to be because they bring in some sort of coaching expertise that turns guys that should be working at the video shop into street fighters. Because there are no players that they can really call up from Super Rugby who are the real deal. Even if they bring back the Will Skeltons and the Korobettis, it's not a radical improvement to that team. The only way that you're going to change this team's fortunes is if somebody can go get Zane Nongor, the prop, and turn him into a ferocious hitman on defense, or a guy who can't be stopped as a ball carrier. And I think that takes a level of coaching expertise that needs to be added to the Wallabies.
And they just don't have the cattle at the moment. They just don't have the forwards. And, he said Joe Smith said he was very proud of how the guys fronted up for 40 minutes. Fortunately, the test match is 80 minutes, okay? We said in the preview it was always going to be tight up until the first 40. I think your halftime score prediction was 11-all. It was 11-9. It could have been 12-11. My full-time prediction was 30-15. It ended up being 30-12. We were kind of, and that was despite the historical records in Perth, we were kind of leaning towards the A team will beat you by 25 plus, the B team will be 15 to 20 points.
Totally.
And that combination team.
Totally.
When you look at that Bok first 40 minutes, and we spoke about Jan-Hendrik Wessels up against Al Alatua, when there was some scrumming in those conditions, we did concede 1 or 2 free kicks at scrum time. Was that interpretation? How do you think Jan-Hendrik went?
Yeah, I think, so this is, for everybody that played in that game, I thought everybody was pretty good. There was nobody in that, for the Boks, who in that match who I thought, wow, this guy's really taken his opportunity and he stood out massively. Fussy probably caught my eye the most because in turgid conditions, he was assertive, aggressive, attacked the ball, backed himself, wasn't in two minds. I thought he had a very good game. But for the most part, I thought everybody did their job. They ticked the box. Satisfactory is what I would say. So Jan-Hendrik Wessels, I thought, was pretty solid at loose head. That first scrum penalty against him, I thought should have gone against Ala Alatoa. And our line-out functioned, and, we scrummed relatively well. And the Mauls, we got 2 tries there. So 3 tries.
Sasha showed he was mortal, dropped a pass.
Yes.
Which should have been a gimme 7-pointer.
Try to get a bit sexy with the one-hander.
So, which was also like in the context of how his career's gone, it was just a reminder that he's still a young kid and he's going to make mistakes. I was very pleased for Fassi from an individual point of view. He looked committed. He looked confident. He looked positive. It was an important game for Lukanya to get through. I love what they did. We spoke about it in the week that you could find Andre Pollard on at 12 at one stage. You could find Mani Lebok on at 10. He doesn't have to worry about the goal kicking. I thought they would have moved Sasha to fullback, but I think it was also a good game to give Fassi a full run. They were trying things in the backs, and you can start seeing this picture develop of who they're backing. And when you think a guy like Damian Willemse still has to come back, Willie Leroux will probably be there for the rest of the season to play. I doubt he'll be in the mix next year unless he's playing exceptional rugby. Get to his 100 test matches. They may not even take him on the end of the year tour, or that could be his swan song. Just to see the kind of flexibility in the backs, and that they can play more than one position. There was a bit of critique that I saw about Morne van der Berg's performance, and our good friends at Report also gave him the lowest mark, I think 3 out of 10.
Really?
Yeah, and it was his first test start. He's an eager, enthusiastic type of player, but I didn't think anyone warranted a 3 in the context of that performance.
I mean, the only place in the world that's mastered the art of cloud seeding better than we have here in the Western Cape is Australia. I've never seen them play in the rain, and they played underwater on the weekend. And Morne van der Berg had to go into a team with 10 changes and keep the show on the road, basically with a snorkel. So I thought he did a decent job. I didn't think he had a bad game. I thought he was pretty solid, and the machine continued to roll. So I thought it was good.
And Grobies, what did you make of him?
Yeah, again, also did the basics right. The scrum function, the line-out function. I mean, the line-out is an area that the Boks will want to improve for the All Blacks, because I think we're operating at around 83%, which is, I think, the worst in the Rugby Championship at the moment. So the line-out's probably an area they'll want to get a little bit more accurate, but everything was fine. I saw Grobies get in over the ball. They all added value. There was nobody there who let the team down, but there was also nobody there that I really thought stood out and sort of pushed the guys who were the starters for a job.
Yeah, and I mean, Peter Steph-Totoy, just again, incredible. 15 tackles, I think it was 82 meters, won a turnover, a couple of clean breaks. The engine on that guy is just something phenomenal. Everyone says if anyone should have been given a break, it's him. But he's also that player. The more he plays, the better he gets. To take the form that he had in the World Cup final or in those playoff games, and to consistently play the way he plays.
Totally.
To me, right now, there is not another rugby player that comes close to him. And people love DuPont. He's a 9. He's a playmaker. He's a game changer. He's a general. But for me right now, the best rugby player in the world is Peter Steph-Totoy.
Oh, he's having a fantastic time at the moment. I mean, the Boks are rolling forward, and he's just absolutely sort of harvesting the gains from that. I mean, he's all over the ball in attack. He's all over the ball in defense, contributes at the set piece. He's everywhere.
Now, Peter Steph-Totoy leads the charge always, and an Earman behind him. When we go back to the Island series, we physically destroyed them in the early stages in Pretoria. That intensity wasn't something that they seemed used to or expected, and also the way we played. They reversed that in the second test. They came out there and they played as if everything depended on it. And they stopped us in our tracks, and they manhandled us a bit.
Yeah.
Now, to be competitive against the Springboks, to have a chance of beating them, a team physically has to do that and sustain it for 80 minutes and put themselves into a position to kick 2 brilliant drop goals in the last 2 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
The Wallabies didn't have that pack. Portugal was never going to have that pack. From what you've seen in the 2 tests against the Pumas, do the All Blacks have a pack that can come to Ellis Park and front us for 80 minutes?
I just don't see it. I think the All Blacks have got some really good players there, and then I think they've got a lot of guys who have still got to prove that they deserve to be in the Test arena. I think there's some youngsters coming through. It's a big drop off from Sam Whitelock and Brody Retallick to what they're fielding now. And you know, they get Scotty Barrett back, but Ethan de Kruit's got an injury. You've got calf injuries there that I think they're waiting for Tuipulotu to come back. So there are serious question marks about that pack. In terms of the history of All Blacks rugby, you're thinking of the guys that are starting there now. Artie Severe is probably one guy that you'd say, okay, this is a serious All Black. He certainly lives up to the reputation of that black jersey. I'm not sure how many of the other guys in that pack are in that conversation. And I think, when you come up against the South African team that's loaded with guys, when you've got basically 2 packs to pick from, that's going to be daunting for them. But at the same time, that is a great opportunity, right? If you're an unknown, unseeded guy who gets to take on the heavyweight champion in a title fight, you've got nothing to lose. The opportunity is there for you to prove yourself.
Were you surprised in the manner in which they came back against the Pumas at Eden Park and physically dominated them? I didn't think this team was capable of winning by 30-plus points against the Pumas, regardless of how much fight and backlash there was going to be. I felt it could have been a combination also. The Pumas just didn't pitch, and then the All Blacks did pitch.
Yeah.
As opposed to this was just a dominant New Zealand pack that went in and destroyed them.
So that was my sentiment. I feel like it was, Argentina doesn't beat the All Blacks every other week, and I think that they really enjoyed that victory. Whether they got out, went out and celebrated too much, I don't know. But certainly from a mental point of view, when you win a World Cup, you can't really pick yourself up for a massive game the next week and go again, because you've kind of done this thing. And beating the All Blacks in New Zealand, I'm not sure how many things there are better than that for Argentina rugby. So they would have really enjoyed themselves. There would have been a massive relief of pressure there, I think, a release. And for those guys to turn it around again and then go win at a stadium where the All Blacks haven't lost now in 50 tests, I think was a bit of a tall ask. And then when you add the sort of 2-point swing on that of the All Blacks backs against the wall like never before with a massive record on the line, I think all of that contributed to that result.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken the build-up to the test. I said the last time the All Blacks had lost a home series was in 1994. And someone reminded me, but it was Ireland. They lost it 2 years ago. And I said, every time Ireland wins a series, it kind of, I forget about it. Something happens that I kind of like, even when they lose a series, like in South Africa, I forgot about that. I thought they had drawn it. But so apologies to my Irish mates. You were the last team to go to New Zealand and win back-to-back tests. And you also won a midweek test against New Zealand Māori. So 2-0 down in the first 2 matches on tour, and they won the last 3. Goes down as just a fantastic achievement. But it was also the start of the big struggles we saw with this All Black side. That said, Zels, we were very bullish when they came here 2 years ago, and we smashed them in Umbelela. 26-10, record score at the time. And then they turned it around in a week. We felt sorry for them. All the press conferences, we were telling them we've been there before. We also felt down. And somehow they come out and they put up a performance. Outscored us 4-2, and they won at Ellis Park. Now, that used to be the hoodoo ground, not anymore. I think they've won 3 of the last 4, played at Ellis Park. If this is the game that I'm more nervous about, it's not the Cape Town test, it's the Ellis Park test, because they do seem to find something at altitude. Backs to the wall kind of thing. Can they bring that intensity that's similar to Ireland, though? I'm not saying as good as Ireland's. Because of the history of the occasion, the 100-plus years of playing against each other, and the fact that they have won at Ellis Park before, and they've won well.
Well, I mean, look, Ireland beats us with Kieran Frawley and a drop goal. One thing the All Blacks have got is enough backline players to stock the rest of world rugby. They've got finishers, they've got creators, they've got all kinds of skill all over the place. They've got a guy called Bowden Barrett. I mean, him alone is a reason to be on point when they arrive at Ellis Park. So Damien McKenzie is still finding his feet there, but he has his moments. And Damien McKenzie is a guy who can win a game in a moment as much as he can cost you one. So tons of experience, great finishers. Will Jordan's back in the mix, 2 tries. They are lethal. Even though you have to, when we talk about the All Blacks now, it's in the context of what the All Blacks are regarded as, revered as, the greatest team in the history of world rugby. That's the conversation. So this is a poor version of All Blacks, of an All Blacks team. But they've still got plenty of talent in there, and it's certainly not a situation where we're going, look, the Boks are going to sweep them. It's just by how much. That's not what I'm saying at all.
But if you talk about Damien McKenzie can win you a game.
Yes.
He won them a game against the Springboks in 2017 at Newlands. We were at that game. Incredible break to score a try. And that was the difference in the outcome. But that was 7 years ago. Now, people keep on saying this guy's got to find his feet at test level. He was playing test rugger 7 years ago. When does he find his feet?
No, 100%.
He was good in that first half against the Pumas because he got good front football. His decision-making was a bit better. I listened to the breakdown, and the trio were unanimous that it was a far simpler game plan that the All Blacks played with. There wasn't as much noise in their heads. Kieran Reid was the guest. He said they just looked like they pulled it back. And they basically went...
They went vanilla.
They went to the most simplistic basics of control your set piece, just play good, simple rugby and you'll get the results. And the players seemed a lot more comfortable. Sam Cane, reintroduction. He's got that test match under his belt now. The last one's not the World Cup final. You see him starting against the Boks?
I mean, it's a possibility. I don't see how Sam Cane makes that back row any worse. So Ardie Savea, Sam Cane, if nothing else, he's got the experience of playing in massive games. He's played the Springboks a couple of times. Certainly worth a look at.
Would you see a Blackadder, Sam Cane, Ardie Savea kind of starting?
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad combination.
In terms of physicality.
I don't think that's a bad combination. Or I like Ethan Blackadder. As much as he may not be a world beater, I think he's a hard grafter. And I think he's a guy who does the basics quite well and certainly brings some work rate to that pack. So he's a guy I think has got potential. And then Ardie Savea is really tier one kind of player. Like he's an elite operator. And I think he leads a couple of metrics in the rugby championships at the moment in terms of carries, tackles, involvements. He's all over the place.
Scott Barrett comes back and he does make a big difference. I mean, it was him, Whitelock and Retallick. Those were the three that they were looking at. But their second row depth, that's probably where I see their biggest Achilles.
Massive.
Their second row. And then I don't know if they quite decided at 9 where they want to go at the moment. Perinara's experience and his physicality is something I think they will look at against South Africa. But his kicking game can be indifferent. And those other kids, they are the future. I just don't know if they're quite there just yet. But interesting how they finished that game. With Barrett at 10, they had Will Jordan at fullback. Ricky Ione, I think, on the wing. Mark Telea coming on for Caleb Clark. So they really do. If we talk about our bomb squad with forwards, they have a bomb squad with their backs.
Big time.
It's just can those forwards give those backs enough ball? But
Correct.
from broken play to be able to put Will Jordan at fullback and put Bowden Barrett at 10 and switch, put Mark Telea, who I think is their best winner, on, and Caleb Clark off.
No, they're blessed with an abundance of talent. And I think that's what I meant with the Damian McKenzie finding his feet. Is I don't think he's used to playing behind a losing pack in the Test arena, and so there's some obvious changes that you have to make there. Simplifying the game plan is a great option. I'm interested to see whether they go with Bowden at fly-off in the series in South Africa, whether they stick with Damian. Big calls to make.
Well, I think they'll stick with Damian in the context that he said he's got to just get that more experience because Richie Mo'unga is the one they want to come back. And by next year, I believe he will be back playing for the All Blacks. Then they know they've got an able replacement in Damian McKenzie. And then they can play that role with Bowden Barrett that they do. Either starts at 15 or he comes off the bench and adds impact. Will Jordan, though, out for most of the season, had a shoulder injuries, had some serious concussion problems. 33 tries in 33 test matches. There's just something special about when he gets the ball, he just creates magic, and he's got some serious gas.
Yeah, I just don't know if they're going to persist with Damian McKenzie now and Bowden at fullback and leave Will Jordan in the wilderness. I don't really know what else that guy has to do to prove his value to this All Blacks team. And I think from a public sentiment / media point of view, like Razor has to get him into the lineup because people are not going to eat potentially a big loss in South Africa with Will Jordan coming off the bench and Damian, tripping over his shoelaces. I think Razor is under a little bit of pressure there to do what would be seen as the logical choice and move Bowden to 10 and start Will Jordan.
Or start him at 14, Will Jordan,
and
Bowden at 15. They are spoiled for choice with their backs,
massively.
Not so much with their forwards. But it's going to be an incredible series. One at Ellis Park, one at the Cape Town Stadium. They've never played at the Cape Town Stadium. A lot of those players, some of them will not have played in Cape Town as well because not being
7 guys in his squad that have never played in South Africa,
and that's unbelievable given the loss of Super Rugby. And every time I watch these New Zealand commentators, there's so many different shows out there, they lament the fact that their players aren't getting that experience of coming to South Africa for a month, coming to South Africa for 3 weeks on a tour, playing up the Highveld, playing at altitude, getting that physical aspect of the game tested week in, week out. And as we keep on saying that, ironically, Vern Cotter came back and he turned the Blues into a very South African French type team.
Yeah.
Very simple, very aggressive, strong set piece, good kicking game. and they won Super Rugby for the first time in nearly 2 decades. So it is there in terms of the approach, and it can be successful. But also speaking to the Irish lads this morning, I said the biggest thing that we could have done was go up north to the URC Champions Cup, Challenge Cup, play our domestic rugby there, and then still have the Rugby Championship to measure ourselves against the All Blacks, the Wallabies and the Pumas, and that style of play.
Yeah.
But we are a much better test team for going up north, and our club players playing them, playing against a range of styles. French teams, Welsh teams, Scottish teams, Italian teams, the English teams. That the Champions Cup allows for that, because that's what you get at test level. You get a different style of play. So we're in a very healthy position. It is the healthiest, I believe, South African rugby has ever been in the professional era. And we talk about the professional era because it's a completely different game to how it was in the amateur era. When we look at the context of the tour to Australia, the players that were injured that Rassie couldn't take, the ones that he took, who do you think advanced their chances the most, or do you think it's status quo in terms of pecking orders?
I think the 5-lock position is going to be an interesting call to make. You know, is it an adhere thing? Is Peter Steff going to shift back in? For me, aside from obviously Sasha was fantastic this season, BJ Dixon emerges as a real hammer to add value to that pack. And I think he has got long-term potential to stick around. And so what does that mean for Peter Steff du Toit? Because as we've already said, he's arguably our best forward. So there's some interesting calls to make there with Franco Mostert being injured and Loet Diaga out. You've got to make a call at 5 at some point. And this All Blacks test will be a good, like I say, our lineout has had some issues. So this All Blacks test will be a good challenge there at that set piece.
What do you attribute to our lineout?
I think it's got to do with changes. You know, you're making a couple of changes. That first test we had Bongi come off early, Malcolm Marks back in, then we started Grobbies. You know, when uncontested, and we played in the rain, and you know it's been a bit slippery. So Franco Mostert moving out, Peter Steff going to lock. There's been quite a few changes to that thing, and we also tried some different combinations. I know we usually play sort of a 6+1 line out. That's sort of our base, and we started playing around with a few 4-man line outs that got a bit scrappy in Perth. So I think we are definitely in a stage of some sort of experimentation at the box across the attack. So I think that all contributed to that.
Do you see as the season unfolds, given who's available in that, a back 5 combination of Dixon, Sear, Jasper, Peter Steff, and Eben has been pretty potent?
Sure. I mean, name a better back 5.
And we're not even talking about what we got up front. Okay,
and there's tons of oaks you could rotate in.
We got two sets of front rows.
Kitsy's on his way back.
Who probably be up there as the 2 best front rows combinations in the world. Now that kind of pack, and then an Adhir coming off the bench and playing that bomb squad super sub role, and that physical grunt that Eben and Peter Steff together give you, and that workman like you said, granite of BJ Dixon. To me, like you said, he's the guy who looks even better at test level than he's looked at URC level, and he's looked very good at the URC level in Champions Cup.
Yeah. For
me, he's the big find.
Yeah.
Outside of Sasha, I mean, Sasha's not so much the big find. He got given a playing opportunity.
Yeah.
And he's just reveled with it. But up front, it's been Dixon has been the one that's come through and I think leapfrog quite a few other players. But so much talent in that box setup, eh? And we're a lot calmer now, guys. We're a lot calmer. Unless you had seen us in Arneson at the weekend, it was just to all our mates at the Arneson Bay Hotel, to Willie Delport, Ebets, going to the community, a community drive, going out and seeing the Seahawks. It's the local rugby club in Arneson, unbeaten this season. They asked us to do the jersey presentation. The legend that is Monty walked in and he saw the green and gold jerseys of the Seahawks and he said it's going to be a great weekend. They wear green and gold. Such a professional setup and how they laid the jerseys out. Monty spoke beautifully, eloquently. That was the Friday evening. Ryan O'Connor hosted it. no one better than The Rock.
Yep.
The next morning, we were down at the rugby club with all the little pickies. Monty's chatting to them again. Just a wonderful, wonderful atmosphere. Villy and his e-bets gave away prizes, gave away cell phones, gave these people hope, just gave them hope that rugby can make a difference in your life. And then we watched the game. Dobbo was great watching the game. We won't tell people what he picked in terms of the score, but he was way out, guys. Zels and I were there. Dobbo, you can coach. I don't know if you're such a good score predictor. Just a wonderful, wonderful afternoon. And then we went back to the club and we watched the Seahawks win the game. And it was just fantastic. And I mean, the atmosphere that there was. And Dobbo was like, this is it. This is what makes South African rugby so strong.
Yeah.
This is the essence of it. And again, the fact that they were wearing green and gold was just so amazing. And, you know, we've been to Barrydale and we did the Flying Eagles and Straighters, and we've now been to the Seahawks. And it's one of the things you and I want to do is take the show to those communities, get the likes of Monty, Dobbo, and a few other guys who always give back to the communities, get them involved. A guy like Villy who wants to be involved, is very community-based. And then Rock's always going to be there. I mean, if there's a guy who can host MC, it's Ryan O'Connor. I mean, he's right up there. I just don't think he will be playing at the moment. But he's got the set of calves to do that. And then the visuals, we're going to bring you a little documentary, or if you can call that later in the week. Imad produced amazing stuff there. The good-looking Imad. And it's always better when he's got his wife there to operate with him. So it was just this incredible weekend. And then to cap it all, the legend that Monty makes his first ever tackle.
Incredible.
Not his best ever tackle, his first ever tackle. And what a tackle it was. And you would have seen that video. It's gone viral. Monty saved a Dolphin. And I can tell you now, as Monty says, he started as a fullback. He's looking a bit more like an inside centre now. But there's nothing wrong with those shoulders and that power. For him to have done what he did to get that Dolphin back in was just superb. And Zels, you had your legion of fans that were chanting your name. Zels, Zels, Seahawks, Zels, Zels. You were giving out the flags. You were hugging everyone. I mean, you were like a god there.
Mate, it was great fun. A highlight of the weekend for me was to meet John Graham, who's got motor neuron disease, big fan of the show, and he came up for a photograph. We met him and his family, and that was just very special. So, a great time, met tons of awesome people, and great weekend of rugby.
And you're a club man. You've coached at schoolboy level, you've coached at club level. It was your first time ever in Arniston as well.
Yes.
I mean, it's a piece of paradise, okay? It's like a lot of people that were there with me said, we haven't been here before. Why? And it's because we tell no one about it, because it is that special piece of paradise. But to be down there, just this golden sun that was setting, to see how organized that game was, the respect that there was between the two sides.
Fantastic.
To see Dobbo in the middle as well.
Fantastic.
Them not even they couldn't believe Dobbo was there.
Yeah.
And to see the Stormers coach giving back to the community in terms of his time. But we had just watched the Boks win. We felt good about Springbok rugby. But what this again showed us was the essence of our game is our schoolboy rugby, our schoolgirl rugby, our club rugby. And it's not just the 23 who play for the Springboks or the 23 who play for the Stormers.
Totally. I mean, the Seahawks are the Springboks of Arniston. I mean, that is a team that represents the community. They're just not just a bunch of guys who love rugby who happen to be at the club. The community is represented by them. They are now a people that support an unbeaten local club. They were in imperious form, and fantastic game of rugby. Like you say, it was well organized at the final whistle. Both teams went and shook the ref's hand. There was no sort of animosity or bad vibes. It was just everyone celebrating a great day of rugby, and everybody had a great time. They had a big huddle afterwards, the teams, and the Seahawks got ready to celebrate a fantastic win.
And we were fortunate to be in that huddle as well. So just a wonderful weekend all around. Obviously capped off by Drickus with that incredible choke win. It was just all South Africa for all the right reasons, and like a popular South Africa. But I've got to do a shout out to a man who was probably the happiest, is the Stormers owner and CEO Johan Leroux, when he sent me that scoreline, Polruth 36, Grey College 3. In his matric year, he says the only game they lost was the last one, and that was to Grey College, and they had a guy sent off early and a dubious try. And he said he still carries the burden that the team of the next year lost a couple of games, but beat Grey College. And so they forgot about their team of the year before that. But this team, 15 out of 15, I think it's the first time since 1991. Kubus Versace's team, Justin Swart, I think they were playing in that Paul Roos team. And I think it's the greatest defeat that Grey College has ever had, 36-3. And in the 28 matches that were played, 1 draw, 3 wins for Grey College, and 24 wins for Paul Roos. They've got a wonderful coach there, Corne Ace, and they've restarted their rugby program 4 years ago. And that again just shows you the value of investing in rugby, investing in the sport, and not just for Paul Roos or for other schools, but every school and every club. Without investment, without Old Boys getting involved, without sponsors getting involved, the Willie Delports of the world getting involved, the fabric of the game just can't be there.
No, totally.
You know, and
Totally.
and we saw that with the locals who supported the Seahawks. We've seen that with what Rick Melville does in Barrydale, with that club community. So I'm still on a high from the weekend, because over and above being able to watch the game in a pub, which I don't normally do, with my mate here and some very, very good mates, to then go down and experience that high of the local team winning, wearing green and gold. It really was just an incredible weekend. And we said it beforehand, the headline on our video last week was "It's all green and no gold," but honestly, it was all green and gold, the colors of the Seahawks.